We started last January with a detailed unboxing of the Nikon Z52, comparing with two other vintage compact cameras. And I should note here that I bought this camera for my wife, also known as camera operator for many of the tips that you see on this channel. And so, over the last year, a lot of video footage has come from the Z52, and I've borrowed it to shoot video and stills that I've shared here. So if you're a regular visitor to this channel, please subscribe. If you're not, you've seen many photos shot with this camera, particularly in relation to APS-C lens reviews that I've done. The Z52 is, at this time, Nikon's latest APS-C camera release with a 20.9 megapixel CMOS sensor, an update of the original Z50, with the addition of the XP7 processor that debuted in the Z9 in December 2021. But without further ado, let's revisit this Z52 after 1 year of use. Hi, Ray here with the Nikon Z52, which, as I say, I bought for my wife in January 2024. Come to think of it, over that time, the Z52 may have seen as much use as any of the other Z series bodies that I own, all the rest full frame. Certainly, it's been the main B-cam on pretty much every location shoot since we unboxed it. In this video, I won't reprise all the technical details I covered in previous videos. I looked at everything of relevance, at least to us, in the main review, which I'll link at the end of this video. So in this video, my intention is to give an overview of what I've come to like and what I've come to dislike about this camera, having given it a thorough 12 months testing in real-world scenarios. Let me start by saying, generally speaking, I like this camera, and by stating the obvious, it's not a Z9, a Z8, or even a ZF, and it's not full-frame, FX. It's a crop sensor, or APS-C, or DX camera in Nikon terminology, and full disclosure, overall, I prefer full-frame cameras, but I value the compactness and the weight savings that APS-C cameras usually bring. And here I should also tell you why I prefer full-frame. Depending on the lens length, aperture, etc., full-frame generally beats out a crop sensor when it comes to subject separation and bokeh, and produces better noise characteristics, as in less noise. That's a Reader's Digest condensation, which you can argue about in the comments, but that's my reasoning, having used a number of Nikon DX cameras, beginning with the Z50II and the Fuji X Pro 2 that got me hooked on mirrorless. As I say, the Z52 does bring weight savings, 495 grams, 17.46 ounces, 550 grams with the battery, and a compact body, though slightly larger than its predecessor. Now I'll get back to ergonomics, build quality, and exterior features in a minute. But in the video department, we got the addition of internal 10-bit H.265 log recording. That was a major reason for the purchase of this camera. I'll pop an example of that here during editing to illustrate the point. That the 4K video from this now 6-year-old sensor carried over from the original Z50 is really quite nice. Edits nicely, accommodates all kinds of color grading, LUTs, and luma adjustment. It should join the other cameras in our bag that we could use for these videos, and the entry-level UI made it friendly for use on the fly. And I should mention, a perfect camera for gimbal use considering its weight. So we like the Z52. It's been a great asset when it comes to these YouTube productions. Amanda finds it easy to use both for video and photos. Now when it comes to video, Amanda is somewhat camera shy, but I'm happy to relay her assessment thus far. She says that she finds the Z52 easy to operate, autofocus is fast and accurate most of the time, and she appreciates program mode, especially since it simplifies photography. And also later, photos from the camera are superb. It's a step above point and shoot, with a phone camera, easy access to picture controls from the button on the top of the camera, rather than having to go to menus or iMenu. It's a nice touch. Literally. More on the buttons in a minute. For myself, when I have Z-mount APS-C lenses to review, I don't have to run out and borrow a camera. There's a method to my madness. But there are a few things that I don't like about the camera, and that's what this next section will cover. I've already mentioned, in the last review, that the EN-EL25A battery is not the longest lasting. In fact, I was unprepared, literally, for just how fast its charge runs out, and we didn't have a spare on our first outing. Luckily, I did have a power bank in the bag, so I had to shoot with it, attached via cable to the USB-C charging port on the camera. So there's that. I've described in another video the problem getting a second battery for a while. There was a shortage, and the first solution with various power banks. And my preferred solution from Smalley, the CB75. So that's that. By far my main disappointment is with the cheap buttons and dials. I realized that there had to be some compromises with a camera that comes in at $1,009.95 US, $1,149.95 with the 16 to 50mm kit lens that we bought, but I know Nikon can do better than this. I'm referring to the rather cheap controls. There's no joystick for focus point adjustment, so we have to make do with the multi-selector, because let's face it, the touchscreen is not a real option, especially if, like me, you like using the EVF. The multi-selector, it works, and if you haven't used a joystick, maybe it might seem okay, but I'm really not that impressed. It's not as responsive as the same control on higher-end Z-series cameras. When it comes to controls, my main beef is with the top mode dial. It rotates far too easily, so it's always getting knocked from the chosen setting. For instance, pull it out of the bag, and I can't figure out why I can't change the shutter speed. Well, it's because the dial has been rotated from, say, manual to aperture priority, or some other mode that prioritizes auto ISO. Maybe the only solution is gaffer tape. How hard, really, would it have been, and how much extra expense, to provide a lot on this dial, as we have on other Z system cameras, or just make this dial clickable with a greater amount of friction, so it can't be rotated with a mere touch from the finger or one's bag when it's dropped in or pulled out. This dial issue is one of the main, though not the only, reason that I ditched the Fuji Expo 2. Sometimes, during various operations, the camera will just lock up, and it has to be turned off and back on again. Now, this isn't a regular occurrence. In fact, it's fairly rare, but it does happen enough to undermine overall confidence in the camera. So I'd be interested to know from other Z52 owners if they experience this, or if I should send ours in for diagnosis. Of course, our 1-year limited warranty is up. I am an NPS member, so I probably should look into it further. I want to reiterate that for the price, this camera does offer value in the APS-C space. But there has been a lot of speculation, not to mention argument, around the question of a Pro APS-C body from Nikon. To be specific, the idea of a replacement for the Z5000 DSLR released in 2009, and it cost $730 for the body. There have been calls for a mirrorless version of the Z5000 since Nikon entered the space with the Z7, then Z6 in late 2018, which I'm using for the overhead right now. For me, well, I'm not really the market for such a camera, but let's speculate that it would have a better Pro build, maybe something closer to the Z8 or even the ZF, with better dials and buttons, I would expect. And I would think semi or fully stacked sensor, 24 megapixels would do, but that's just me. I will say, with the Z52, 21 megapixels can be cutting it a bit close when it comes to leaving room to crop. Having said that, here are some great puffin shots provided by a friend, cropped somewhat. Nice work, Tim. And how about price? Well, I'd imagine Nikon should be able to create something around the, let's say, $2,500 US. I mean, if they can release the ZR for $2,200, right? And from a brief fondle of the ZR, it seems like a nice, solid build, akin to the ZF. But will Nikon do it? Who knows? And does it make sense? Well, at the risk of wading into this contentious question, I don't know if it does make sense. The Z5II now has proven a popular entry-level full-frame camera, as illustrated by the popularity of the Z5II Z50II comparison video on this channel. I haven't examined the Z5's dials and buttons closely, hands-on, but the point here is to wonder if there's room for another APS-C camera, in the near term anyway. I don't know. Perhaps it would make sense at this point for Nikon to release a ZFC2. A ZFC2 with a few improvements would be a hit, I think. And maybe the Z30 is due for a refresh. Please let us know in the comments what you think. Do you see a Pro DX camera in 2026? Z500? ZFC2? Z32? And would you buy one or more of these? Are you a Z50 or Z52 owner? How do you like the camera? I haven't talked about lenses in this video, other than to mention third-party APS-C lenses that I've had a chance to review. Now, Nikon hasn't exactly flooded the market with APS-C lenses until the release of the new DX lenses late last year, the Z16-50mm f2.8 VR, the Pro version of this variable aperture tit lens that we chose with our Z52, and MC35mm f1.7. I think these show that Nikon isn't ignoring the format. As I've mentioned before, there are a wide variety of third-party lenses for Z-mount APS-C. I've lost count, but I have reviewed a few here. With the Virtuox Nikon case pending, the question of how lenient Nikon will be in the future with sharing the Z-mount, well, I think that remains to be seen. Purely speculation on my part, but it seems clear that proper agreements are at the core of the litigation. I have a hard time with that one. We'll see what 2026 brings on all fronts, third-party and Nikon releases. Meanwhile, I think the Z52 is itself a capable wildlife camera. For instance, I can take my full-frame Z400 f4.5 VRS lens, which, with the 1.5 crop, results in an equivalent field of view of 600mm, and with the 1.4 teleconverter, we get 840mm, the 2 times 1280mm. The Z52 burst rates reach up to 11 frames per second with its mechanical shutter for both RAW and JPEG. For even higher speeds, it has C15 and C30 modes up to 30 frames per second, utilizing the electronic shutter, but to achieve those speeds, the modes only produce JPEGs. So it's not a Z8 or Z9 or even a Z5II, goes without saying. But pair it with something like the Nikon Z50II 250mm 4.5 to 6.3 VR with up to 5 stops of image stabilization, and you have an affordable wildlife setup at around $1,400 USD, with a versatile reach up to 375mm in full-frame terms. And I think my friends' puffin photos illustrate the point. I hope this video proved useful. If it did, give it a thumbs up. It helps the channel grow. And if this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss new content from me. In the meantime, take care. Cheers. We'll see you later.